Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, America. You are now listening to Mikasa Sukasa, and I am your host, Niko House. I want to thank you all for tuning in to our daily podcast. I know, I'm missing a day. Unfortunately, I was a little sick, and I figured that I didn't want to spend 45 minutes of the podcast coughing, So I feel like it will be okay for y'all if I miss a day. But don't worry, I'm going to make up for it. I'm going to give you a couple in a row this week. So no worries there. As usual, I want to thank our sponsors, the credit surgeons. If you're looking to have your credit fixed, not next year, not the year after, but this year with full and complete transparency, I urge you to visit thecreditsurgeons.com. With that out of the way, I want to go ahead and get into the topic. As you all know, over the last couple of days, we've had a government shutdown. Dum, dum, dum. I know. It's bad stuff, right? Democrats blaming the Republicans. The Republicans blaming the Democrats. Military getting screwed as usual. But the real question is, what is this about? What is the government shutdown actually about? Now, we know what is being said by both sides. On one side of the fence, you have the Democrats claiming that DACA is the reason why. Now, on the other side of that fence, actually, we don't know what the other side of the fence wants. They say it's about immigration, but that's actually, in my opinion, muddying the waters. The reason why I say that is because they actually sent a bipartisan bill that included, appropriations for DACA and funding for the wall, by the way. Thank you, Chuck Schumer. Pretty much everything that both sides wanted, believe it or not. The issue was, although Trump said that he would sign it, he refused to sign it. So now the Republicans have been put between a rock and a hard place. Trump, as you can see, has kind of stayed silent, and then when he finally did talk, he's being very general, and he's actually lying about what happened. He does that a lot on Twitter. I'm not going to lie. He does that a lot. But don't get it misunderstood, people. The Democrats, for the most part, are in the same boat as the Republicans. Like I said, Chuck Schumer was the one who decided that he wanted to get rid of to push forward the wall. And even though Trump agreed to sign on any bipartisan bill, by the way, as long as it included his, things that he wanted, he refused to do so. Now the discussion, however, has been hijacked a little bit. All of a sudden, discussion is about illegal immigration. And I'm thinking yeah, that's not true. It's not about illegal immigration, but Republicans know how uneasy and insensitive people are to the immigration topic. Understand something. By the definition of illegal immigration, a definition, by the way, that I think a lot of people don't actually know when they use that phrase or use that term, is, one, there's no such thing as illegal immigration. There's a difference between illegal and unlawful. I'm not going to get into that right now, but it's just a term that people use to dehumanize people, who they don't want in the country. But by definition, at least by what most people consider the definition of illegal immigration, people who are beneficiaries of DACA, or dreamers, if you will, are not illegal immigrants. They are not undocumented immigrants. They are actually the total opposite, people. They have visas. I know several dreamers. They have visas. And for some reason, there's been this discussion going around in the conservative side of things, where they claim, people aren't going through the right procedures to get their paperwork done correctly. And that's not true. It's totally not true. You have to fill out paperwork to get your visa in order to be a dreamer. So, like I said, the narrative really is not being discussed in the way that it should be. And even if we want to talk about the reason that the GOP specifically will use immigration as a tool is because they use it to play on people's fears. They use it to convince people that the world is being overrun by illegal immigrants, which is not actually true. In fact, whenever we have the conversation about undocumented citizens, for some reason, the only people who get shown on the television screen, the only people who get discussed are South Americans, specifically Mexicans. But what they don't like to discuss, what the pictures that they don't show, are the many, many Eastern Europeans who come into this country and they move into the bigger cities. They have businesses, they have businesses, they have jobs, and they're contributing the same way that many Mexicans are contributing as well. But there's a reason they don't show you those faces. Because when you see someone who looks like yourself, it's a little bit easier to sympathize or empathize with them. Like, I don't know, those people look a little bit more trustworthy. But they choose Mexicans specifically because the oligarchy has a specific use for Mexicans. They muddy the waters for immigration. They make sure that it's a continuous, ongoing topic because they want to continue to use Mexicans for cheap labor. This is like immigration 101. For Trump to have the audacity to talk about illegal immigration when most of his buildings in the last decade have been built by Mexican, like undocumented immigrants, is hilarious. Because he's been one of the prime beneficiaries of undocumented citizenship in this country. The idea that undocumented citizens are a tax burden is a fallacious one. It's not true, people. It's just not. They pay billions in taxes every year. The idea that the undocumented citizens are committing crimes at much higher rates than anybody else in this country, not true. It's not true. Why? Because they don't want to get sent back home. Yes, just like in literally every other demographic, there are bad apples. But there is not a significant enough statistical, there's not a significant enough statistical margin where we can say that definitively, because these people are undocumented and they're not worried about being caught because they can just disappear, they're committing more crimes. It's negligible. There's no it just doesn't happen. Yes, they commit crimes, but it's usually nothing to do with them being undocumented. And trust me, it's not just Mexicans who commit crimes. Eastern Europeans, have you ever heard of the Russian mafia? Matter of fact, have you ever heard of the Cuban mafia? Because that is something that is very prominent in Miami that never gets discussed. Remember Wet Foot, Dry Foot allowed a lot of Cuban mafia to come here, and you'll never hear about it or the crimes they commit because they run a lot of the businesses here. They're even politicians or in bed with politicians. And most of them look white. So you'll never hear about the crimes that the Cuban mafia in Miami or in South Florida in general commit. Because Cuban mafia is not providing cheap labor. All right. People keep saying that they keep referring to DACA recipients as illegal and undocumented. How would we know how many DACA recipients we had if they were undocumented people? I want you to think about that. We wouldn't know. It's common sense. But we can look at the other side of the fence when Mitch McConnell actually asked the Democrats to choose between provisions for DACA, which were already agreed upon, by the way, and CHIP, which is the children's health insurance. What kind of evil, maniacal, conniving, heartless bastard says with Just the utmost pride. He tweeted this. You know, all the Democrats have to do is choose between Chip and DACA. So, okay, so here are the options. What you're saying is choose between children having health insurance and people being separated from their families. Wow, Mitch McConnell, you sure are, you know, the American man. And then it's this whole narrative of taking care of your own. What the hell does that even mean? We're a nation of immigrants, people. Most of you people are 1 or 2 generations removed from immigration. The idea of taking care of your own is meant to be purposely divisive. Just like I said on my show the other day, beware of politicians, media personalities, and others trying to divide you by putting you into groups. This is the same tactics that they used to do with Irish people and Scottish people and Irish people and Italian people. And then eventually it was black people and white people. You know, because blacks and Irish, actually, believe it or not, a long time ago, we used to band together because we were both being treated like shit. But then they start creating terminology and using language purposely to divide you and to confuse you and to muddy the waters. Now, Bernie Sanders is one of the only people who have injected some sense into this. Because his conversation obviously isn't only about helping DACA recipients and beneficiaries who already have visas, by the way, people. Already have visas. Already established in the States. But he's talking about a clear path to citizenship. Because there is not one right now. There is not a clear path. Even when you thought, like, oh, if I get married, that's not the case, people. There is no clear path to citizenship. Even if someone does everything right, they can still be denied citizenship for arbitrary reasons. And on top of that, the Department of Homeland Security, who's in charge of the citizenship, establishing citizenship for citizens at this very moment, is backed up years. So you could have been approved or denied, but you still wouldn't know for years. And usually, depending on how many people are in your family, that's years and thousands of dollars down the line. Now, our military right now, obviously, is probably the people who are going to be hurt first and foremost by this shutdown. But Mitch McConnell decided to object to an amendment, or to a bill, excuse me, that would make sure that through a government shutdown, our active duty military would get paid. I think that's pretty reasonable. Like, hey, they didn't do anything. This has nothing to do with them. Let's make sure they get paid. Mitch McConnell decided to object. So that lets you know exactly what this is about once again. If Mitch McConnell objects to something like, you know, the GOP, they're so pro-Republican. Mind you, once again, the GOP was also the same group that whenever Barack Obama decided that he would finally give us a legitimate raise, the 4% wage increase for all military personnel. The GOP knocked it down to 1.1%. Disgusting. The GOP has never really been on the side of the military. It was really only when George Bush came into office that they became the pro-military people. It was actually before the Democrats who were considered the warmongers, and the GOP were kind of considered the isolationists. This discussion is growing petty. It is petty. It's bipartisan political grandstanding. But we really, as a people, just need to learn when to recognize we're being played. Illegal immigration is not going to be the end of your world. Trust me when I say you do not want the jobs that undocumented citizens have in this country 90% of the time. Trust me on that one. Your job's not being taken. Your kid isn't being abducted by anybody who's a dreamer. You can't have a criminal record when you apply to be a dreamer. Especially nothing serious. Hey, it may be a traffic ticket, but nothing serious. So, what are we really arguing about? If you're one of those people who are literally, that's all you're talking about is because you believe in what the hell Trump's talking about and tweeting about, you really think this is about illegal immigration? Bullshit. He got his wall. We're just protecting the people who are already here. But no. They've managed to convince certain people that y'all are actually going to be harmed by undocumented citizens when that literally almost never happens. You have a better chance of being harmed by your neighbor, people. Honestly. So please start thinking more critically. Like, the Democrats and the Republicans are to blame for the shutdown. But come on, the stuff that's being said. Look at some of the stuff that Mitch McConnell has been saying. Let's go to his Twitter. I hate Mitch McConnell, by the way. He's just incompetent. The boy ugly as hell, too. But that's neither here nor there. This is the first tweet I see. To most Americans, taking care of our military veterans, providing health care for needy children, and funding the government sounds like a fundamental responsibility. Now, and then he says to the Democratic leader, apparently they sound like hostages ripe for the taking. Now, understand something. Remember the GOP was the one who tried to get rid of CHIP almost entirely, which is the health insurance. Once again, I just told y'all, Mitch McConnell objected to making sure that the military personnel were taken care of even through a shutdown, so that would not be something that we had to figure out while dealing with necessary issues. But it sounds like he just used all of those things for bargaining chips. All of them. He's not even talking about, he's not even saying what they're trying to do. He says, in the Senate, the minority has the power to filibuster. And on Friday, the Democratic leader made the extraordinary and destructive choice to filibuster the bipartisan bill and guarantee that American people, guarantee the American people a shutdown. But it was Trump who didn't sign the legislation, people. It wasn't Schumer. Schumer is not my friend. Trust me. But it wasn't Schumer who didn't sign the legislation. They just wanted to take out a bunch of stuff, not use Trump's name, because they don't want to, hey, Trump said we had to take this out. After Trump promised if they reached a compromise, then they would be able to keep both. And they did reach a compromise. So like I said, Mitch McConnell is a liar, to say the least. But Schumer was the one who caved in and gave Trump the wall to begin with. Remember that, New York, whenever you're voting for your next senator. Remember that Chuck Schumer almost sold y'all, tried to sell y'all up the river, just didn't get the pesos he was expecting. No pun intended. Maybe it was a little pun intended, but still. I sincerely hope going forward that we get a legitimate resolution to this, because like I said, this political grandstanding is dangerous and it's playing with people's lives. And these people, they're going to get paid. Congress and the Senate are still going to get paid, people. And don't let them think that just because the Republicans have control that this is somehow different. Because the government shut down under Obama, and once again, Obama had control of the Senate and the executive office. So just like it was the Senate that shut down the government this time, it was the Senate that shut down the government last time, with Democrats in control of both. 2013, people. I know a lot of you remember because some of y'all went on furlough because of that. The partisan politics and the games they're getting old, and we really have to start holding these people accountable. The only way we can hold people accountable on both sides of the aisle are with facts and realizing how they use their own personal facts to manipulate you into believing and supporting whatever agenda they have on the table at the time. Even racist ones, sexist ones, it doesn't matter. They will pander to your fear no matter what, on both sides. And I hope you all understand that going forward. I hope y'all also remember all these people who are playing with your futures, playing with the future of the military, playing with the future of the health insurance of children, playing with the future of families who have done everything they've needed to do legally. They're still being threatened. Their livelihood and their security is still being threatened. Military who've done it, who if they don't show up to work, they don't get paid. But the Congress isn't going to do its job, but they're going to get paid. I promise you that. I remember last time during the 2013 shutdown, they passed a resolution to make sure they got paid. Actually, they gave themselves a raise, if I recall, to add insult to injury. But hey, let them convince y'all that they're on your side. Snakes on both sides of the aisle. Make sure you cut your grass extra low. Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure you download and follow, and always remember, people, find your balance. Peace.